Che mamari nina. Tura la ba. Kafana lana tula ba.
The Red Planet has been visited by several automatic robot visitors, including probes, rovers, and landers. The entire experience was modeled with cameras using digital technology which could create three-dimensional images. Humanity could thus see the vast plains and rugged chasms of Mars with today's technology. As a rocky body, Mars is like Earth, but its diameter is only half that of our planet, making it the second smallest planet in our solar system. Iron oxide, also known as rust, is spread throughout the Earth and the atmosphere, responsible for its red color. The atmosphere is also relatively thin compared to the Earth. Near the equator, Mars does not keep much warmth from the sun. In the daytime, the temperature is about 32 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature plummets to minus 121 at night. Mars's air is mainly composed of carbon dioxide, so humans cannot breathe there. You should also bring a spacesuit because the high pressure would make you very uncomfortable. Mars is undoubtedly an exciting vacation destination despite these facts. Even though it has changing weather and seasons, it is still a planet. In summer, temperatures on Mars can differ by as much as 80 degrees between the northern and southern hemispheres. Cirrus clouds are formed because of melting poles. They are seen in the sky during spring storms. With wind speeds up to 400 miles per hour, these storms produced vast Martian dust. Dust covers much of the surface. Dust devils can even form as small cyclones. We can learn a lot from Mars's extensive terrains. There is a significant difference between the northern and southern regions. In the cooler north, we find the low plains and broad flats with names like Utopia Planitia or Amazonas Planitia. Since the invention of early telescopes, dark areas on Mars have been visible. At first, they were believed to be oceans. Mars, however, is dry and only contains tiny quantities of water. The southern hemisphere has older formations and more craters from a geological standpoint. Terra, for instance, is densely cratered in the highland region of Arabia Terra. Hellas Planitia is one of the many impact craters in the southern part of Mars. A low point on Mars is 5 miles below ground level, with a basin diameter of 1,300 miles. Mars has no other low point. Valles Marineris runs parallel to the equator. Our solar system is home to the most extensive rift system known to science. Over 2,500 miles long, it is up to 440 miles wide and 5 miles deep. Noctis Labyrinths lies in the western part of the continent, a giant tectonic crank with an unknown origin. There is an entanglement of rifts and valleys up to 12 miles wide and 3 miles deep. Mars holds at least 2 records for size, one of which is the giant volcano Alba Patera, which covers the largest area of any volcano with a diameter of 1,000 miles and a height of 4 miles. It is not taller than Mount Everest. The Olympus Mons on Mars is taller. Our solar system's highest point measures 16 miles across and dominates the nearby plains. Humanity has explored and studied Mars more thoroughly than any other planet except Earth. There was likely much liquid water on Mars's surface millions of years ago, as Mars must have had a much denser atmosphere. Life could have been created better back then. Its atmosphere changed when solar winds still in its polar caps thinned out its atmosphere. Bacteria or microbes might have lived there. It has been found that such life exists under the perpetual ice of our poles. The Eagle Nebula is located 7,000 light-years away in the star constellation of the Serpent. A light year is approximately 55 trillion miles high, so it is 95. Compared to our solar system, it is a mere 10 billion miles long. It is an immense nebula. Cold hydrogen clouds form stars in the Eagle Nebula. These clouds are blown apart because of the emissions from the already active suns, creating chaotic forms. The giant fresh lights above this structure illuminate these shapes and reveal their three-dimensional shapes simultaneously. Solar winds are thinning out this massive object. A dense hydrogen nebula must have formed the star factory. The material became thicker and denser until the high pressure triggered an explosion like an atomic bomb. It also heated other cold dust clouds, causing them to ignite. This caused shock waves to sweep through the formation. In the presence of denser clouds of cold gas, the heated gas acts like a battering ram. After compressing them and igniting them, the cycle continues. How did this process begin? One such shock wave can be seen in the brighter contour in the upper left corner of the nebula. This is clear from the nebula's infrared spectrum. In this image, we can see the dense accumulation of hydrogen in a greenish tone. This red color comes from the hot dust, and its concentric distribution explains where it comes from. This chain reaction was triggered by the explosion of a massive star 8,000 years ago, right in the center. Because of the shock wave generated by the explosion, the densest regions of the cloud moved slowly. These thick gas clouds have become the birthplace of new stars. They include the famous pillars of creation. Some of these pillars crumbled. Photographed by Hubble in 1995, these images are breathtaking. Considering the date, this image is relatively recent. What is the reason for this? They were torn apart by the cosmic radiation of the Sun thousands of years ago. From there to here, it takes light 7,000 years. As a result, when these light rays reach our camera's sensors, they show a distant past. Let us look at our solar system to understand dimensions such as these better. Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars are all close to each other. They look so close together that you might think they are huddled together. After Mars, an asteroid belt follows, and the distance between the planets increases. Neptune comes last. Neptune and Earth are 2.7 billion miles or fewer than a light year. This equates to a mere 4 light hours. To put that into perspective, we could see a gigantic flash on Neptune 4 hours after it was flashed on Earth. Neptune appears like a blue sphere from a distance, reminiscent of Earth's oceans. Therefore, Neptune is named for the Roman god of the seas. Neptune's atmosphere is mainly methane, because of its chemical properties. At the top, methane absorbs red light. We see enormous clouds several thousand miles long. Because of the planet's high rotation speed, auroral northern lights appear more complex than Earth's at the poles. The phenomenon occurs when charged particles of the solar wind enter the atmosphere. The planet Neptune is also accompanied by its rings and its 17 moons. It is possible to change the shape of these rings. The Atom's ring is the largest and has a slightly reddish hue. The rings appear rather dark, making it difficult to distinguish them. Primarily, they comprise dust and small particles the size of grains of sand. Gas giants such as Neptune consist almost entirely of their thick atmospheres. To reach the rocky core, which is almost as big as the entire globe, we have wind speeds of up to 1,200 miles per hour. This pressures the rocky core. There is no comfort on Neptune's largest moon. The pressure prevents the moon's surface from being defined. Consequently, not much can be seen on the way down, because the atmosphere liquefies without transition, an explosive mixture of methane, ammonia, and water. Triton is less hazardous. Our Earth moon is much smaller than Triton. Despite its small mass, its atmosphere is less than 1% as dense as ours. Ice cracks cover the surface of Triton, and deformations create a network of disturbances that show geological activity. Triton also has geysers. As they shoot through the surface ice, they form fountains that shoot into the atmosphere, some as high as 5 miles. As the icy dust spreads over long distances, it settles back down on the side away from the sun. Temperatures on the shaded half of Triton are minus 394 degrees. Our solar system has never experienced a lower temperature. In Triton, such a winter lasts for 40 years. The rotation of this planet is opposite that of Neptune, another fascinating peculiarity. There is a reasonable distance between it and Neptune. The gravitational effect creates excellent tides. The geysers of cold volcanism are believed to result from these forces. Triton will not remain there for long. The planet will be forced closer to Neptune in a few 100 million years. Neptune will collide with it, which will cause it to be torn apart. Neptune's ring system will resemble Saturn's because the debris forms a denser ring system. You will have plenty of time to take in Neptune's breathtaking beauty until then. There is also its second largest moon to see from here. In our search for alien life, we have had little success. There must be a reason so many people believe in extraterrestrial beings. Nowadays, humans can see familiar shapes in stellar objects like the moon's surface and the constellation's conditions. Laws of probability in outer space could explain this. Stars are more many than grains of sand on Earth. Therefore, how are we the only star system with intelligent life? It seems as unlikely as a single person winning the lottery 100 times in a row that there is no life anywhere else in the universe. Even astronomers usually name their findings based on that principle. Thus, the Omega Nebula in the constellation Sagittarius has not always been called M17 or NGC 6618. These phenomena have also been given more poetic names, such as the Horseshoe Nebula and the Swan Nebula. A naked eye can see the Omega Nebula from Earth because it is so bright. It appears only as a grey lump, though you would need to use the right equipment to see its true beauty in images taken with visible light. There are different classes of stars, with stars being the heaviest and hottest. Their light is blue. Switching to the infrared camera, we see what resembles a massive fire dragon spreading its wings to take flight, which was previously hidden. Because of its density, infrared light cannot penetrate this cloud of matter. Scientists call this cloud M17X, and inside, baby stars are hatching rapidly. The sight of Earth from space is one of the most astonishing things one can witness with one's own eyes since the dawn of human space travel. As of now, no stars have formed there, but they will eventually illuminate the area that now lies in darkness. The Omega itself will be bathed in bright light. We are currently creating many more alien lifeforms' habitats besides our gazillions. Even the light of these suns takes thousands of years to reach Earth, so it is still questionable whether humanity will ever be able to reach them. So buckle up. We should first take a moment to look at how Earth was created before we travel out there. The Orion Nebula is our next stop. There is a star-forming region here which is 1,500 light-years away. With this incredible cosmic configuration, it appears as the bright region in the shape of Orion in the sign of the Hunter. There are approximately 1,000 to 2,000 young stars. 4 prominent stars form trapeziums in the galaxy. Planets will later form around many of these stars. Within this trapezoid are so-called protoplanetary disks, surrounded by newborn suns. Protoplanetary disks are vast accumulations of material whose gravitational pull is constant. In that center, the star is igniting and forming another star. During the process of accretion, leftover material circles around. Massive amounts of matter form from the concentration of cosmic particles. As they grow larger, they influence the sun's gravitational pull, becoming asteroids. Asteroids travel at high speed. They repeatedly collide, resulting in massive masses of rock. Some of these asteroids eventually grow large enough to have a significant gravitational pull, and thus pick up more and more material. This process eventually leads to them becoming planets. By collecting particles of gas floating in space, some of these planets develop atmospheres. This image's hydrogen and sulfur molecules are green, and the carbon-rich molecules are orange or red. Those yellow dots of light are young stars encased in dust and gas cocoons. Some brown dwarfs are also found in the Orion Nebula. Known as failed stars, they could not collect enough mass to sustain a nuclear reaction. Fusion occurs in the Sun. All 8 planets of our solar system orbit the star at their center on elliptical orbits with varying trajectories. Human eyes must see the Sun at around 100 million miles from Earth. Its brightness must be reduced by 98%. The Earth-Sun system has been running steadily for about 5 billion years now, so let us examine this famous center of our solar system. Because hydrogen is constantly fusing into helium, it reaches 27 million degrees at the Sun's core. 3.5 million degrees Fahrenheit is reached at the pulsating surface. Fusion releases energy as photons. Light-speed photons are released from fusion. It takes 1,000 years on average for them to finally leave the Sun's center because of its density, as they collide with matter frequently. Once the photons have escaped the Sun's center, it only takes 8 minutes to reach Earth. The Earth appears in this light from the Sun primarily in its luscious oceans. The continents are primarily brownish and dark, while white is the second most dominant color. Combined with the vast ice crusts at the poles, our atmosphere appears smooth and quiet from space because of the white clouds. As opposed to the violent event that characterizes the formation of the Sun after the protoplanetary disk has formed. Asteroids and other celestial bodies constantly bombarded the young Earth. A heavy asteroid tore a part of the Earth's mantle off. The Moon is supposedly the result of remaining in orbit over millennia. As the bombardment rate decreased, Earth slowly cooled, forming a solid stone crust on its surface. However, the atmosphere developed due to frequent volcanic eruptions and gases. As vaporized water condensed, it returned to the surface as rain, while ice meteors filled the Earth's oceans. As evaporation and rainfall eroded Earth's rocky surface over millions of years, a hydrological cycle was set in motion. Over time, the first supercontinent broke apart several times, and landmasses took the forms of the continents we know today. The Earth eventually became home to life. Amoebas, fishes, land animals, reptiles, birds, and mammals probably first appeared in the water. Later, humans appeared as well. Scientists are still discovering the wonder of life's creation and its prerequisites. Water, oxygen, and sunlight are usually necessary to get things started on Earth. However, they would not have been as effective as another essential factor, the magnetic field of the Earth. Solar winds are diverted around our planet, preventing them from affecting our oceans and atmosphere. We are shielded from the Sun's radiation by this large force field, while the geodynamic activity creates magnetism. If Earth lacked a magnetic field, it might have become as barren and bleak as the Moon, the closest astral body to Earth. The Moon has captured the imagination of humankind for millennia. The concept of extraterrestrial life on the Moon has been expressed through paintings, songs, and literature. Early silent films also showed scenes of lunar life. It was rightly expected that astronauts would not contact any Moon residents when man first stepped on the Moon in 1969. Despite the absence of extraterrestrial life forms, there is still something magical about the Moon. Having a diameter of 2,000 miles, Earth's moon is the 5th largest in our solar system. It takes the Moon 4 weeks to orbit the Earth once. Our everyday language reflects this. Monthly is derived from moon because of its gravitational pull. On Earth, the Moon has significant effects. Our tidal system is one of them. The Moon also contributes to maintaining the Earth's magnetic field. Even Earth's biosphere is affected by the Moon. Some birds and insects use the Moon as a navigational aid. According to the Moon's appearance, it remains dull because of its complete coverage of grey dust. Meteor strikes create this layer because of the Moon's lack of atmosphere. Meteors crash into the surface of the Moon with no damping and are pulverized. As a result, moon dust is like sand, or, more precisely, regolith. There have been no traces of water so far. We still divided the surface into land and sea areas on the Moon's surface. Because of earlier scientific beliefs that the dark spots on the Moon contained water, we talk about lands and oceans on the Moon today. Now that we know those seas are basins of solidified lava, we can understand their origin. Severe asteroid impacts probably created them during the Moon's early days. As the Moon's crust was still molten underneath, the craters created by the asteroid's impact were filled with lava. It is interesting to note that the Moon is still geologically active today. There are up to 10 moonquakes per day because of the intensity of the activity. Most of these are moderate, but some reach level 5 on the Richter scale. This is enough to damage buildings without protection. Seriously. Thankfully, there are no buildings here, and the craters do not seem to mind a minor moonquake from time to time. Although the Moon's landscape lacks variety, you can still see a magnificent view from here. You also get a magnificent view of the stars without an atmosphere or light pollution, as the blue mother planet rises majestically. However, this obscures the Earth's view. Perhaps we should take another trip to the top. The constellation Cassiopeia is about 6,500 light-years away. The Heart and Soul nebulae are neighboring nebulae. The stars in these nebulae are arranged characteristically. Radiation from these two prominent stars has swept away the surrounding stardust for millions of years. Combustion of matter and gas results in the ignition of newborn stars. As a result, the outer regions of these two cavities are lined with young stars. In each cavity, we find an ancient star close to 10 times as massive as our Sun, providing the most substantial evidence to support the most widely acknowledged theory on how stars are created. If we survey, we will find a formation called the Mountains of Creation. The product posts we saw earlier in the Orion Nebula are here. Here we see them as pink dots at the points of the tubular pillars. Compared to the mountains of invention, the pillars of creation are like tiny fingers. These two are comparable in size here. In the star formation alone, this section of the mountains of creation is 50 light-years wide, equaling 275 trillion miles, and hundreds of stars are present. The stars are yellow-white. The red substance represents aromatic hydrocarbons. Consequently, our thermal cameras can see it because the light from the young stars heats it. Perhaps we should return to the neighborhood of our stars and observe some planets that already exist. If we waited a couple of million years, the planets would also emerge here. It is going to be a long wait for me. Humanity and science have achieved a great deal with landing a man on the Moon. Since then, many human missions into space have been planned. Mars has always been the target, even though Venus is our next-door neighbor. Currently, there is a Nomad unit on Venus. How strange is that? We can see why the conditions are not welcoming by switching to the live-action camera. Because of its low orbit, Venus is the second brightest object in our sky. During the day, Venus is hardly visible and is known as the evening star. During the day, it can sometimes be seen by the human eye. Venus is visible because of its dense and light-reflecting atmosphere, combined with its proximity to Earth. Venus is much more than its proximity to Earth. The planets are about the same size, mass, and density. Additionally, the two planets share several similar physical properties, often referred to as sister planets. Despite these similarities, gravity is close to 90% of the force. The differences are significant. We cannot see the surface of the Earth because the atmosphere is so dense. Let us look at the surface of Venus using radar and infrared cameras. Venus has an average surface temperature of 867 degrees Fahrenheit, making it the hottest Earth-like planet in our solar system. Atmospheric pressure crushed the first Russian probes that arrived here in the second half of the 20th century. Venus's surface air pressure equals the pressure in Earth's oceans at 4,000 feet below sea level. It seems perfectly reasonable to agree that a downtown is a bustling place. Besides dimly red glowing surfaces littered with craters, Venus closely resembles popular depictions of hell, sulfuric clouds, acid rain, and active volcanoes. We could also examine the local topography using radar image systems. Because of the high temperatures, there is no water on the surface. We can still distinguish between high and low geologically despite this. We are fortunate to have nomads who are remarkably resilient. Venus's two highest plains could be considered its continents. Ishtar Terra is found in the northern part of Venus, and the one we see here carries it. Besides the Maxwell Mountains, the region is about the size of Australia. Like the Himalayas, its peaks reach over 6 miles high. The Aphrodite Terra continental formation covers a similar size to South America. Thetis and Ovda Regio are two bulged formations in this land of Aphrodite. A building resembles a scorpion that runs across the world's equator. Huge trenches separate the Ovda Regio. The steep-walled valleys or chiasmus look like canyons in North America. There are massive volcanoes scattered throughout the region. Madman is the tallest among the Venusian volcanoes, towering 5 miles high. There are over 50,000 of them. Venus's surface is mainly made of solidified lava shapes, which is not surprising. Pancakes are appropriate for rather peculiar-looking specimens, such as these circular pressure domes. Venus also boasts lava channels that are incredibly long. An average mile wide and a mile deep, they run for thousands and thousands of miles. Known as Hilda Fossa, it is 4,200 miles long. A rival for the reach of the Nile, the world's longest river. On Venus's surface there is no moon, which is another feature or lack thereof. Since the atmosphere is thick, you would not have seen a moon. Besides obscuring our view of Venus, these thick layers of clouds may also hide its greatest mystery. According to some scientists, these clouds could also contain microorganisms. With Nomad's advanced sensors, this is not surprising. It should not spoil the fun. My ability to detect microbes would enable me to reveal the truth quickly. That life could emerge in the primordial ooze of our Earth millions of years ago gives us reason to believe that it could have happened elsewhere too. Could it be happening as we speak? Where else could it be happening? The solar system's habitable zone includes Venus only marginally. In the end, we can only answer that big question. Satellites and probes will have to be sent up there through research. A large amount of data will have to be scanned, sampled, and analyzed. Even though we live in technologically advanced age, large portions of our solar system remain unexplored. A ring of asteroids separates Saturn and Mars. Our solar system stretches much farther behind Neptune than any other significant planet. The Kuiper Belt is a vast asteroid field. Over 70,000 objects, some of which are over 60 miles in size, are located here, and it is 20 times wider than the central asteroid ring. The objects are leftovers from creating our solar system that was not incorporated into the formation of our planets. Some of these objects came very close to becoming planets. From the 1930s through 2006, Pluto was the closest to becoming a planet. After the trans-Neptunian object Eris was discovered in 2005, and it was officially designated as the 9th planet of our solar system, the media quickly announced that Eris was our 10th planet. Scientists classified these objects differently and created a new category for dwarf planets. Like the dwarf planets, Pluto was no longer considered a planet. More and more dwarf planets are discovered as scientists delve deeper into the Kuiper Belt. The trans-Neptunian planets are named after earthly deities such as Mark Mackay, a Polynesian god. In addition, there are Inuit goddesses of the sea like Sedna and Hawaiian goddesses of childbirth like Haumea. Our scientists act as diligent midwives, finding and contacting more and more of these mischievous rascals. But it is nearly impossible from Earth to gain meaningful data about these new arrivals. Even the only dwarf planet in the inner solar system remains mostly unexplored. Ceres sits just between Mars and Jupiter and has about 600 miles. There has been speculation that there is life there because it supposedly carries a significant amount of water ice. Because of this, our engineers work around the clock to build more probes. We hope to have more data on the trans-Neptunian dwarf planets in a few years. The current spacecraft takes about 9 years to reach Neptune, so this could take a while. From here, we have a breathtaking view of Earth, and as we have already discovered, outer space continues to hold many surprises. Some planets we are about to visit may surprise you. We also have more profound insights to share. The origins of planets and stars have been unraveled. What goes around comes around, and everything has an end. The Sun is no exception. There is an exciting object living in Taurus, an invisible space. As this stellar nebula, the Crab Nebula, appears torn and furrowed, it hints at what has happened. It shows the explosion of a star. We know the Sun is a giant fusion reactor. Inside it, hydrogen and oxygen fuse. A star would be blown apart by the detonation of helium and oxygen under most circumstances. The Crab Nebula takes on a constantly changing shape because it spawns high-energy particles. It is impossible to deplete matter over billions of years because of the Sun's tremendous gravity. In the Crab's case, the Sun's gravity eventually won out. Approximately 1,000 years ago, the Crab Sun exploded. The explosion was so bright that ancient Chinese astronomers observed it during the day. During the past 1,000 years, the remaining core of the Crab Sun has developed into a highly dense neutron star. Sadly, our Sun too will one day suffer a similar fate. It should still be fine for another couple of billion years. When the day arrives, Mercury will be the first victim of the Sun. Mercury is having a hard time right now, besides the threat from the Sun. Let us not waste our time talking about it. Let us inspect instead. In a few billion years, it will all be forgotten. Mercury is the last Earth-like planet in our solar system. It also has a rocky surface. Other than that, it has few earthly characteristics. It resembles the Moon from a visual perspective. Mercury is the minor planet in our solar system, so these characteristics fit well with Mercury being the minor regular planet. Mercury does not have an atmosphere because its surface is littered with craters. From up here, meteorites could hit Mercury. While these craters appear to be innocent footprints in the sand, a closer look reveals their proper size. They are enormous. Diameters range from 125 to 1,000 miles among the 10 largest craters. Borealis Basin has the largest diameter. An astral body with a diameter of at least 60 miles could only have caused this considerable dent. Mercury's crust was cracked by this brutal impact, allowing lava to flood the basin. A similar process formed our Moon's seas of lava. Radial marks surrounding the craters show the brutal force of the meteoric impact. There are more recent and brighter meteoric rudiments around the point of impact. Mercury is also home to the so-called Rupees Cliffs, over 100 miles long and more than a mile high, unique to Mercury. Scientists think the Rupees cross through several meteoric craters, showing that the planet may have shrunk because of these cliffs. Ring-shaped walls usually surround larger craters. Mercury may have had an overall diameter of over 200,000 square miles 4 billion years ago. Though it resembles our Moon, Mercury is not exactly a pleasant place to visit. The reason for this is its proximity to the Sun. As the Sun faces half of Mercury, its temperature can reach 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperatures can drop as low as 275 degrees at night. Mercury has the broadest range of temperatures on any planet. Its day and night cycles are equally extreme. Mercury's eccentric spin means the Sun only rises every 176 days. It is quite a long night on Mercury. Mercury circles the Sun while you wait in the dark for the morning. The Sun does at least shine brightly once it rises. Mercury is 30 million miles from the Sun, less than 1/3 of the distance between the Sun standing on Mercury's surface and us. Humans would be exposed to a lot of solar radiation and heat, which are highly hazardous. Thanks to our nomads, we are not exposed to these conditions. It must get warm down there now for the little guy. Mercury's comparison with the Moon raises a related question. Can the Moon be compared to Mercury? Mercury, like Venus, does not have a moon. This has led scientists to speculate that Mercury may once have orbited Venus. Such a theory can explain the irregular orbital trajectory of Mercury around the Sun. From a geometrical standpoint, in the late 19th century, observing Mercury's course appears to take a generational form. Astronomers mistakenly interpreted it as a proof of the existence of a previously unknown planet. Because of the evidence, they gave the phantom planet the name Vulcan. I hope they will live long and prosper through volcanic means, but that would undoubtedly have to happen elsewhere. The Helix Nebula in Aquarius would also be unlikely for their home. In the 18th century, Helix Nebula was named for its shape. Early telescopes compared the nebula to gas giants like Jupiter. Instead, it is the remnants of an exploded sun, as well as the remains of another supernova. Stars eject their gaseous components far into space at the end of their lives. The remaining core, called a white dwarf, heats the gas particles and propels them farther and farther into space. The white dwarf is now visible as a bright spot in the middle of the galaxy. Gas particles that are blue-greenish are much more relaxed than the reddish-orange gases recently emitted. The result is like a giant eye with Helix Nebula. The similarity is most apparent in the infrared mode. It is an eerie sight that somehow fits the fate of that once thriving solar system. There was a massive explosion at that nebula system during which all the planets and moons were torn from their orbits. They were destroyed by gravitational forces or destroyed by the massive Sun. Some comets escaped the galactic rubble. Furthermore, the Helix Nebula has an enormous eye that stares into space. The eye looks as though it is searching for the ring. Saturn's rings would be that. Saturn is the 6th planet in our solar system, located almost 1 billion miles from Earth. Saturn can be seen from Earth by the naked eye, proving that Saturn is a pretty giant planet. A simple telescope shows it about 75,000 miles in diameter, making it the 2nd largest planet in our solar system. The orbit of Saturn is one of the most remarkable features of this planet. Saturn's rings have been a symbol of science fiction, astronomy, and space exploration since the stylized rendition of Saturn with its rings appeared. Saturn is a part of this disk. We can distinguish between several sharply defined rings as we get closer. Each Saturn ring has a different color tone depending on its composition. There are over 100,000 rings around Saturn. Each ring is visible. The gaps between them are easily discernible. We can see their material composition when we get close to the rings. The rings are asteroid fields circling the planet. There was a diverse range of compounds in these rings, some as small as grains of sand. Saturn's smaller moons pass right through these rings. Shepherd moons are called their orbits, ensuring the rings remain in reasonable shape. Sadly, we cannot set foot on Saturn. This is because the gas giant does not have a surface. Its atmosphere is primarily hydrogen and helium. Near the planet's core, pressure rises to enormous levels, causing the gases to liquefy. The only thing we can do is send our nomads into the outer atmosphere. Saturn has 2 layers of space. Because of the density of the outer layer, the lower layer is not even visible, making this sight relatively rare. We are now closing in on the whirlwind at the South Pole, a hurricane with a fixed position and a diameter of 5,000 miles. As with the South Pole, the North Pole also offers a distinctive feature, a polar vortex shaped like neat hexagons. There are several hundred miles of depth to this phenomenon, which spans over 15,000 miles. We would waste our chance if we failed to land somewhere, since our nomad is already here. Saturn has 62 moons, some of which are enormous. Their diameter ranges from 500 to 1,000 miles. That is half the size of our moon, and it also looks familiar. Rhea is exposed to temperatures of minus 275 to 360 degrees Fahrenheit. The atmosphere of Rhea is fragile due to gas emissions. Ice covers 2/3 of its surface. Like Earth's moon, the surface is littered with craters, but the cavities appear softer. This is because Rhea's crust is more flexible than our moon. Likewise, it is composed of ice, though it has more prominent craters. Rhea's sister moon, Dione, has similar characteristics. Rhea's can be compared to Dione since these 2 moons resemble each other closely. The Odysseus crater is the most striking feature of Thetis. Because of the orientation of the crater, it covers nearly 40% of the surface. A cold eruption may also have contributed to the light stripes. Theatrical productions might recall one of the deadliest battle stations in science fiction. Enceladus consists almost entirely of water ice, reflecting 99% of all sunlight entering. A large part of its icy surface is reddish. There is still no clear understanding of how this pattern developed. It is possible that different colors of material emerged from within Iapetus because of volcanic activity or meteoric impact. There is also a rift spanning over 800 miles on the Iapetus. This formation looks like a walnut from a certain angle and is up to 8 miles high. Tectonic activity and an asteroid's ring's remains have been proposed to explain this anomaly. Our solar system's most reflective astral body is Enceladus. Enceladus's cryovolcanic geysers keep the surface fresh by spitting out ice fountains of up to 300 miles in height, another source of its ever-new look. Organic chemicals were very abundant in the discharged material. Among these organic materials, life cannot exist without water and moderate temperatures. Warmer temperatures are the only thing keeping insulators from surviving. It is an exciting discovery, but our last stop will highlight our quick tour of the moons. Saturn's largest moon is a big guy. Titan resembles Earth, making it possibly the most significant planet in our solar system besides Mercury. Titan has several additional features that make it appear like a fully grown planet, not just an Earth-like world, but a fully grown planet, a body in our solar system that is the most like Earth. The only moon known to have a dense atmosphere is Titan, which has a diameter of 3,200 miles. There are many clouds in this atmosphere, primarily composed of nitrogen, although traces of carbon hydride and other organic ingredients are also present. At Titan's surface, various hydrocarbons, including methane and ethane, are present in the clouds. At minus 275 degrees Fahrenheit, the average temperature is low. Titan's landscapes are remarkably like those on Earth. Xanadu, which is approximately the size of Australia, is along the equator. Mountain ranges reach up to 1 mile in height here. Because of the low temperatures, the ice crystals took their current shape due to water ice being washed down by methane rain. This dense ice is like silica rock in density. It contains no water, of course. Instead, it contains pools and even seas of methane. Desert-like areas dominated by dunes contrast with the methane seas. Wind most likely formed these landscapes, like dunes on Earth. Sand particles intended for miles long and 500 feet high are easily shaped by winds as low as 2 miles per hour. The sand particles are approximately 1/10 of an inch wide. They are organic materials that dried after raining on Titan. Considering all the similarities to Earth, life is not impossible. Water-based life forms cannot exist because of the cold. Hydrogen-based life forms might be possible on Earth based on recent discoveries. On Titan, hydrogen is practically everywhere. On Titan, there may be microscopic aliens like bacteria and microbes. In the past or the future, they may have existed. It is unknown. I think it is about time we send a few more rovers up there to explore under every ice rock. The spark that ignites life cannot be pinpointed with certainty. All life is part of an eternal cycle, and that is certain. The same applies to suns. When one star explodes, a shock wave carries tremendous energy through space. The Crab Nebula, for example, was equivalent to 100,000 full suns. These same energies are now fueling the formation of new stars and planets. Even material shot out of dying suns forms cosmic nebulas, later becoming art and planets. In this way, the universe is created. Stunning sights result from this process, so why not watch some of them unfold? For instance, the American Nebula is named for its resemblance to the North American continent. However, the whole thing appears utterly different in infrared view, but no less fascinating. The Rose Nebula provides an additional visual experience at 407 light-years away. This is the closest star factory to Earth. 300,000 years is the average age of the 300 suns we find here. From a star's perspective, that makes them babies. The oldest discovered stars date back over 12 billion years. Jupiter, the giant planet in our solar system, has over 80 moons to look at. According to scientists, our Sun was born in a dense star-forming region such as the Pleiades and then moved to its current location. It is easy to see the Pleiades from Earth, also known as the Seven Sisters. They are, therefore, the subject of many old legends and scriptures. About 100 million years ago, dinosaurs roamed the Earth and created these songs. This makes the Pleiades younger than our Sun, which has about 5 billion years on the meter. As we look at our solar system, we see the Sun, the 8 planets and their moons, some asteroids, and the dwarf planet Ceres. At the outermost reaches of the Kuiper Belt, more dwarf planets, and many, many asteroids. There is a part of the Milky Way visible in our night sky. The diameter of this area is over 4 and 7 billion miles. In one sense, it sounds enormous, but in another sense, it is just a tiny fraction of the Milky Way. In rural areas with little light pollution, it appears like a brush of milky fog in the sky. We see the light of millions of distant stars. They all belong to our galaxy, derived from the Greek word for Milky Way. Ancient Greeks believed that their chief god created the Milky Way. Zeus made Aaron breastfeed Heracles to make his son Heracles breastfeed. The infant has pushed away, causing some milk to spill across the sky. As we live inside the Milky Way, the streak we see in our night sky is only a tiny fraction of the Milky Way. It is impossible to photograph the Milky Way in its entirety. Scientists have figured out what our Milky Way looks like from observations, calculations, and comparisons with other galaxies. 2 spiral arms characterize it. Bright stars occupy these arms to a surprising degree. We are far from the galactic center. We can find it to the southeast of this diagram. There are about 100,000 light-years between each of the stars in our galaxy. It would take 100,000 years for us to travel from one end to the other if we traveled at light speed, around 671 million miles an hour. This defines our imagination. I will scale it down so that we can better grasp it. Imagine our galaxy is 10 miles across. In that case, our solar system would be the width of a single strand of hair. It would barely be visible to the naked eye, and our Earth would be the size of an atom. Do we not need to consider how small we are? Before we get dizzy imagining how vast the Milky Way is, or how tiny we are, compared to the Milky Way how small we are, let us inspect. The scales are still hard to grasp here. Uranus is approximately 3 billion kilometers away. A supersonic jet would take at least 200 years to cover that distance. Considering their many similarities, Earth and Venus are sister planets. Indeed, Neptune is twinned with Venus. Neptune is classified as Uranus. They can be confused easily because they are twins. Unlike Neptune, which appears deep blue, Uranus appears light blue with a hint of green. Neptune appears similarly light blue. Neptune and Uranus are more affluent in water, ammonia, and methane than Saturn and Jupiter's other two gas giants. As methane absorbs red light in the atmosphere, it determines the color. Therefore, they belong to this subclass of ice giants. Further, Uranus is blisteringly cold, so it makes sense. No matter what type, only Uranus has an internal heat source for unknown reasons. Its energy comes from the Sun, which is not much considering it is 2 billion miles away. Because of Uranus's moderate amount of heat reaching its atmosphere, it receives only 4/100ths of Earth's total energy. The planet has fewer weather effects than Neptune. Occasionally there are large cloud bands as large as 18,000 miles, but these dissolve quickly. There is a possibility that Uranus's inner cold had something to do with the horrendous meteor strike. This conclusion is based on Uranus's axis is severely tilted. So, when we look at Uranus from Earth in this way, we mostly see it from the top down. Rings encircle the planet like an archery target, while the moon circles around it like hands on a clock. Gas giants have rings, and Uranus's rings are like Neptune's. They are composed of microscopic dust particles. Mayae and Nye's rings are distinctive because their composition appears slightly red and blue, respectively. The other rings are dark gray. There are some here and shepherd moons which keep the curls in shape. 27 moons orbit Uranus, ranges from 6 to 1,000 miles. Their small sizes make them relatively lightweight. Neptune's moon Triton alone weighs more than they do together. Miranda, Ariel, Umbriel, Titania, and Oberon are all similar and can be viewed as miniature versions of our moon. Miranda is most interesting because she has very different surface structures, including heavy displacements, fragmentation patterns, and a labyrinth of canyons that stretch up to 12 miles deep. Miranda is a unique astral body within our solar system because of this. There are several theories about how these formations were created. Miranda traveled once into the gravitational reach of Umbriel and Ariel. These forces heated her since she was 8% water ice. This resulted in considerable tectonic effects. After some time, Miranda broke free from those forces to assume her current orbit around Uranus. I do not know about you, but I feel somewhat disappointed by Uranus. It has no actual surface. The weather on the moons is not very impressive either, compared to the moon, that is. I think we deserve a treat now. Additionally, space offers plenty of opportunities for that. Since we have been looking at our Milky Way today, I will show you some of the most striking distant galaxies. First, let us look at Messier 74. The galaxy is shaped like a spiral. just like our own. M74, however, has bright pink areas along its arms. These are clouds of gases illuminated by young stars. Much ultraviolet light is produced in these regions, hence the pink color. The appearance of Messier 66, the enormous galaxy of the Leo triplets, is far more asymmetrical. Because of the gravitational pull of its two nearby siblings, its appearance has been shifted, at least in galactic terms. As galaxies drift through space, some stunning compositions are possible. This pair of galaxies is known as ARP 273. Scientists believe that the smaller universe has passed through the broader one in a couple of billion years and created a rose-like form. Possibly, Andromeda and our galaxy will crash into each other. Antenna galaxies have also collided. A collision between these galaxies created billions of brand new suns, most of them in tightly packed groups called superstar clusters. Those were some fantastic images. The galaxies are too far away to be seen. That prevents us from getting closer to them. There is still one major planet in our Milky Way that is almost a solar system. Where does this come from? You will see. We are currently visiting Jupiter, the giant planet in our system. Jupiter alone weighs more than all the other planets combined. Despite being 480 million miles away, it is one of the brightest objects in the night sky. Long before the invention of the telescope, it was named after the Roman god Jupiter. Known as the King Star by the Babylonians, Jupiter reigns over its miniature realm with its 63 moons, some as large as planets. It is almost like a solar system unto itself. Jupiter probably would have ignited and become a sun if it had accumulated a bit more mass. While that would have been spectacular, it has not happened, but Jupiter has rings. They are not spectacular, but they are there. The particles are almost as small as cigarette smoke. Most of the grains are black, so they are challenging to see. The grains are composed of dust from the nearby moons. Because of their low gravity, these moons produce dust when meteors hit them. The debris blows out into Jupiter's orbit, resulting in the critical ring comprising dust from interstellar and heavenly bodies. Another interesting fact is that the rings move closer to Jupiter in a spiral motion. Dust particles are slowed down by the planet's magnetic field, which is very strong. As a result, Jupiter will swallow up the rings. The colorful atmosphere of the planet resembles a marbled rock as we study it. A hull of gas surrounds the planet almost entirely. As with all gas giants, they become liquefied because of the rising pressure as they descend towards their cores. This core is composed of rock and ice and is about 20 times heavier than Earth. We cannot land on Jupiter, so let us look at the atmosphere instead. Cloud bands parallel to the equator are the most distinctive feature. Then there is the Big Red Spot, a gigantic whirlwind with a fixed location. The wind speed inside can reach 375 miles per hour, and its diameter is 3 times Earth's. Its existence was first recorded in 1664. Jupiter has 2 sharply separated cloud layers. Its outer atmosphere affords us a fascinating view. Different temperatures separate the 2 cloud layers. Jupiter's magnetic field is also impressive. Jupiter's magnetic field is enormous. Magnetism is 14 times stronger than Earth's magnetic fields, and its outer measurable limits almost reach Saturn. Although you cannot directly see a magnetic field, interference with Jupiter's main moons causes massive auroras at the North Pole. Jupiter's magnetic field shields these 4 moons from solar radiation. The moon appears more inviting because of this. We had to work hard to make our Nomad's electronics work in this environment. Callisto, Jupiter's most distant moon, is millions of kilometers away. It is a beautiful moon. It looks like our moon from such a distance. Watch. As we inch closer to Jupiter, we come across Ganymede, a planet with a diameter of over 3,700 miles. This is our solar system's giant moon. It is far more significant than Mercury. Mercury's crater-littered surface in its fragile atmosphere looks pretty similar to its own. Next on our whirlwind tour is Io. It orbits Jupiter at 250,000 miles and takes 42 hours to complete one orbit from a great distance. It is more visually appealing because of different surface area types. The most prominent structures on its surface are volcanoes and lava pools of enormous dimensions. It almost looks like it was painted with an extensive brush. It is like a hellish moon. Liquid sulfur covers the entire planet in various aggregate states, from gaseous to liquid to solid. It gives Io a very colorful appearance, with yellow being the dominant color. Despite only being separated by 20 years, photographs of the surface of Io show vastly unique features. It becomes more apparent why its surface is subject to the constant change experienced by all bodies in our solar system. Io has the most volcanic activity. Continuous eruptions send lava up to 180 miles into the air at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. There are also rivers of lava with temperatures of up to 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit and lava pools up to 250 miles wide. The rivers flow hundreds of miles. Despite the heat generated by the volcanoes, Io's average surface temperature is only minus 236 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a harsh environment. If there is life on Io, it will have to be tough as nails. It is still exciting. Europa lies 370,000 miles away from Jupiter and 6 miles thick with an ice crust. Europa looks a lot like Neptune's moon Triton. The atmosphere of Europa is mainly made up of oxygen. Red coloring results from minerals accumulating in the atmosphere. Europa's surface is among the smoothest and youngest in the world. There are hardly any structures higher than 300 feet above the ground. However, the chaotic network of ridges and trenches is visually striking. The so-called lines are up to 12 miles wide and remind me strongly of Earth's ice fields. Oceans of liquid water lies beneath the icy crust of Europa. Because geological processes cannot explain the positions and alignments of the linear, they serve as a clue to one of the biggest mysteries of our solar system. It interacts with the surface, and the line is created because of the irregular orbit of Europa. The intense tidal forces affect the ice and heat it, so it is time to drill and activate Nomad's submarine mode. Organic chemicals, water, and warmth are necessary for creating life, and these elements are present in Europa's ocean on Earth. Some organisms can survive without sunlight. Life forms such as these are very primitive, like microbes or passive organisms. According to some theories, cosmic radiation may cause Europa's water to release oxygen. Waters here may already be more oxygen-rich than our earthly oceans, which would meet the requirements.
Che mamari nina. Jordan la ba. Ko phana lana thola ba sa. Jai Mama Rina, Papa Na, Dana, Jai Mama Rina.